The Moab Police Department is under investigation. Moab Police Chief said in a statement that an outside party filed a request for a formal investigation into their interaction with Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. In this body cam reaction video, that outside party, aka Esquire Audits, explains why.
She fought for what she believed in.
I wanted to offer a different kind of analysis. I've been watching media regarding the Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie case, and I've been somewhat unsatisfied with the type of coverage. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about, there's my mail carrier. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the type of analysis that I think the case needs and hasn't really had yet. And that is a constructive criticism of the police interaction with the couple when they pulled them over. And if you haven't seen the body cam video, I'm gonna have clips of it, although not the whole thing featured here. And I was so distressed after watching the body cam, and I watched it like the minute it came out. So it was really before anyone in the media had had a chance to comment on it. So I had truly fresh eyes. No one had poisoned the well. And I was very concerned about a few things that no one's really talking about. Full disclosure, I have a background in domestic violence and sexual assault. Before I went to law school, I did social work in that field in two different nonprofit organizations, and had quite a bit of formal training in the issues of intimate partner violence and sexual assault, and then worked in the field and in a variety of different capacities. So my training is old, and I have not been in the field since the 1990s. And it's entirely possible that my understanding of the dynamics of these types of relationships has evolved, and that I'm not abreast of the most current research. So with that caveat, I just want to talk to you about my experience and my understanding, because I think that it can offer a little bit of insight. Before we get into the body cam and my analysis, I wanted to share with you an email that I sent to the Moab City Police Chief and many city government officials. I'm going to go ahead and read the video aloud because some viewers have requested that. I'm writing to respectfully request your Internal Affairs Division open formal investigation into the interaction between officers of your department and Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie. Specifically, I'm requesting you investigate the following potential policy violations. 1. An officer discussed his wife's private medical diagnosis and prescribed medication with Brian Laundrie while transporting him to the police station, which was captured on body cam and subsequently released without redaction. 2. Several officers discussed the legislature's intent to remove discretion from the responding officers in suspected domestic violence calls and strategize around how they can evade the imposition of legislative intent to arrest and/or cite suspects. 3. An officer appears to carefully and deliberately coach Gabby Petito to answer questions regarding intent in a manner that would allow the officer to avoid issuing her a citation or arrest. 4. An officer refers to Gabby Petito as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl who is 110 pounds dripping wet, and refers to Brian Laundrie as a big, tough, strong guy who can defend himself, which is not relevant evidence when evaluating the protocol for legislature-mandated action in domestic violence calls. Further, it's unclear why the eye and hair color of one of the subjects would be material to any analysis, and may suggest the officers were operating under a confirmation bias or that they were unconsciously influenced by stereotypes about who is involved in domestic violence. Correction. When I first wrote this email, I believed that the blonde hair, blue-eyed remark was made by an officer, but upon a second watching, it seems that Brian may have been the one speaking. However, the 110 pounds dripping wet and big tough guy who can defend himself comments, they were made by an officer. When I realized the mistake, I contacted the Moab PD to amend my complaint, and I brought attention to the error. The audio from the body cam was very difficult to decipher at times. The follow-up email that I sent to the Moab PD is at the very end of this video. 5. An officer makes disparaging references to the legislation relevant to this call in the presence of the subjects, claiming that he cannot treat the subjects differently because of the gender of the primary aggressor, and then proceeds to do precisely that. 6. The officer references a 911 call that identified Brian Laundrie pushing Gabby Petito away from him, and then says there's a second witness who they haven't spoken with yet but may corroborate this claim. The 911 call of the second witness, in fact, claims Brian Laundrie slapped Gabby Petito. Should the officer have obtained this statement from the second witness or listened to the 911 call before determining who was the primary aggressor? 7. The officers twisted themselves into knots, trying to find a way to avoid effecting an arrest or citation because of their sympathy for this couple and their assessment that no one was actually in danger, which is precisely what the legislature attempted to curtail, substituting the judgment of the officers for the mandates of the legislation. Sorry, my dog's click, 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 click of your nails. Yeah, Mama has to trim your nails. Okay. 8. The officer concluded in his report that he did not believe the incident rose to the level of a domestic assault so much as a mental health crisis. Have officers received sufficient training in mental illness and domestic violence to accurately make that determination? Finally, as a thought exercise, it is worth considering whether or not Gabby Petito would be alive today if the officers had followed the parameters of the legislation they attempted to evade. It seems they substituted their own judgment about not only the level of danger, but also the appropriate remedy law enforcement should provide. Had they arrested and jailed Petito, since they interpreted the available evidence as indicating she was the primary aggressor, she may have spent the weekend in jail, been subject to a restraining order upon release, and then contacted her parents to arrange for travel home to avoid violating the restraining order. Instead, the officers made their own one-night stay-away order, which was legally unenforceable, to protect the couple from formal intervention into their relationship by the legal system. Now she is dead. Thank you for treating these serious violations of police protocol with the attention they deserve, and for taking appropriate disciplinary action against the officers involved. Further training is required for these officers regarding domestic violence, mental health issues, and the importance of following protocols instead of circumventing legislative intent when they choose. Sincerely. So the chief of police responded and copied, I believe, everyone in the email chain that I had originally sent, saying that I am in receipt of your complaint and have requested an investigation into this matter. Best, Brett Edge, Chief of Police, Moab City Police Department. And I was very pleased to see this, and a bit surprised because I would have assumed that there was already an ongoing investigation in the matter, but the way that this was worded gives me the impression that maybe there wasn't one and now he is initiating one. A few hours after the chief responded, Yahoo News reported that the Moab Police Department was under investigation for its interaction with Petito and Laundrie. The Moab Chief of Police publicly announced that they had received a request for an investigation by an outside party, that's me, and were taking the complaint seriously. This is a good lesson as to why writing letters is so important. I almost didn't write one because I couldn't imagine that the investigation had not already been opened. In any event, I'm very grateful that he's taking my complaint seriously. When he concludes the investigation, or when it is concluded by, I don't know if it's done in their department by an internal affairs division or by the city, what I'll do is I'll do a public records request, and parts of it may be redacted, but I should be able to get, you know, either most of it or a good portion of it. And I will share that on this channel. Now, I sent this email on September 21st, and I received the response from the chief of police on September 23rd, which is very fast. I send a lot of letters like this. I've sent, I could do years of videos just reading you the letters that I've sent to police departments and mayors and city attorneys over the years. It's surely hundreds of letters at this point. And I'll tell you, I rarely get any response at all. So I'd say maybe 2% of the letters get a response, but it's more when it's in California. And it's even higher when the area code in my phone number is the same area code as the police department, because then I almost always get a call, which makes me chuckle. One of the things that made me actually laugh out loud about this email, and we all need a little bit of levity when we're talking about the subject of intimate partner homicide, which is what it looks like this probably is, although everyone is entitled to the presumption of innocence. Until and unless they're convicted. So the laughter, which I'll share with you, came from clicking the send button on my email and immediately getting 2 auto reply messages, one which was from Joel Linares, the city manager of the city of Moab, because I always try to copy the city manager in my emails, saying, Joel Linares is no longer with the city of Moab. If you are in need of assistance, please reach out to the acting city manager, who I had also copied on my email, so there's no need to forward it to her. But of course, I have no idea when exactly Joel, decided no longer to be with the city of Moab, but one can only, infer that he probably saw like the writing on the wall and, I'm out of here. They don't pay me enough for this shit. And if that weren't bad enough, get this, the second out of the office reply was from Lori Simonson, who is the city attorney. And I feel like in my emails and letters, whenever I contact city government, the chief of police is like the least important person in the email chain. The most important person in the email chain is the city attorney. That's where it's at. Because if you can get the city attorney to actually pay attention to what you're talking about, that's where real change can actually happen. They're more powerful than anybody else in city government. At least that's my opinion. So Lori Simonson's auto reply says, "Thank you for your email. My last day with the city of Moab was September 3rd, 2021. Please contact city manager Joel Linares," who also is, out of there. So you've got your 2 highest ranking city officials. I'm pretty confident I can say that without actually having to look it up. City manager and city attorney are both no longer with the city of Moab. So that bit of levity is necessary when we talk about this subject, and it kind of tells you just how much of an impact a video going viral can have, and assuming that these are related, and that viewers of YouTube videos can basically accomplish something that 20 years of campaigning and elections couldn't do, and federal legislation can't do, and propositions can't do, etc. YouTube, boom, it's done. It can have a really big impact. And if you sit at home and watch YouTube videos and do the thumbs up and you subscribe and you write comments, that's probably in many ways as helpful as writing a letter to your congressperson. No, it shouldn't be that way. And maybe I really shouldn't say that, because that is an exaggeration, but it's not much of an exaggeration. It is important if you want to support a channel to do the thumbs up button and the subscribe and comment, or at least one of those three, if you want to support that channel. Holy shit. That was thunder. We never get thunder in Southern California. Okay, maybe God doesn't want me to promote my channel. Maybe that's what that's about. Never mind. Forget about the whole like and subscribe. I was going to talk about how the YouTube algorithm pays attention to it and it promotes a channel. Forget it. Don't want to piss off anybody up there. Whew. This is the email that I sent to the Moab Police Department and the government officials after I received a reply from the chief saying that they were opening an investigation. Dear Chief Edge, thank you very much for your prompt reply to my request and for agreeing to open an investigation into this incident. After watching the body cam video a second time, it's possible that I may have misattributed the blonde-haired, blue-eyed remark incorrectly to the officer when it appears those words may have been spoken by Brian Laundrie. He and the officer talked over one another, and it seems the officer referred to Gabby Petito as 110 pounds soaking wet, while at the same time Brian began speaking, and it's difficult for me to tell who said which words. The audio is poor and difficult to understand at times. Therefore, I wish to amend my complaint to include this acknowledgement and to apologize in advance if any of my assertions are based on a misapprehension due to poor audio quality. One additional concern I wish to add to my complaint is the officer's lack of investigatory follow-up after Gabby Petito told him that Brian had grabbed her face with his fingers, digging in to the point of causing a cut on the inside of her cheek. It was hard to discern her exact words, although I did hear the word cut, but she seemed to indicate that her cheek was swelling up or tender, and she cupped it with her hand as she described the injury. The very first question the officer asked in response to this was if Brian had been drinking. His very next question returns to the swerve and curb strike incident. In the footage available to me, he never returns to Gabby's allegation of a crime to ask more questions, investigate, or follow up in any manner. The officer seemed distracted by the center line swerve and curb strike and the admission that Gabby had punched Brian in the shoulder when the lights were activated. They spend the majority of the investigation pursuing this allegation, while the reason for the initial detention, the 2 911 calls reporting a man shoving or slapping a woman, fell by the wayside. Even when Gabby reports a battery that caused injury, her statement is entirely ignored because the officers seem to be operating under a confirmation bias that influenced how they interpret the evidence and their theory of the case. Brian was thoroughly examined for evidence, including an examination underneath his clothing for injuries of which he may not be aware. Photographic evidence was obtained, and he was offered EMS services for his injuries. None of this appears to have been provided to Gabby Petito, even after she reported a battery resulting in injury. Thank you again for your commitment to an impartial examination of this incident by an outside agency so that law enforcement across the country can learn from it. Sincerely.
Was I no woman in this life? Short upon the earth now was her time. Of all the seeds she'd sown and the people she had known, deeply did she touch the soul of mine. She called a spade a spade. She stood on the edge of reason and even faced with death until her final dying breath. She fought for what